To blend in with the crowd is to surrender to oblivion. This isn't merely a cautionary tale, but a prophecy that has unfolded time and again throughout history. Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher who dared to challenge the status quo, penned these words not out of cleverness, but out of a deep understanding of the human condition. He witnessed, in every society and every generation, a subtle yet pervasive erosion of individuality. It's a slow and insidious process, one that doesn't claim the body, but rather the soul. The moment you trade your unique voice for the comfort of acceptance, your distinct identity for the applause of others, you begin to disappear. Not in a dramatic, overt collapse, but in a piecemeal fashion, incrementally surrendering your autonomy. You cease to think for yourself, to move of your own volition. Instead, you become a reflection of what others deem worthy, a mere echo of their expectations. And so, you fade into the background, another faceless name in the sea of humanity, forgotten because you never stood for anything genuine. Nietzsche grasped a truth that eludes many to this day. Conforming to societal norms isn't merely a social choice, but a spiritual capitulation. It's an admission that you'd rather be liked than authentic, preferred to blend in than shine brightly. And what does this conformity yield? Perhaps a life of comfort, peppered with occasional pats on the back. But when the curtain falls and the noise subsides, what remains? Nothing. No legacy, no truth, no self. For the world doesn't remember those who seamlessly fit in. It remembers those who dared to be different. This realization is terrifying, isn't it? To stand alone, to think originally, to risk being ridiculed, judged, or rejected simply for being true to oneself. Most people aren't prepared for this level of vulnerability. They may espouse quotes about authenticity and individuality, but when push comes to shove, they fold. They opt for silence over self-expression, comfort over conviction. And Nietzsche saw this not just in others, but in himself. He recognized the ease with which one could fall into the rhythm of the herd, the temptation to mute one's voice to avoid backlash. But he also saw the devastating consequences of such actions. How conformity crushes originality, turning thinkers into parrots, erasing what makes them unique. He wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe, and today that struggle is worse than ever. For the tribe is omnipresent, infiltrating every aspect of life, dictating what's acceptable, what's trending, what's allowed. Each time you compromise to maintain peace, you lose a piece of yourself. Each time you conform to avoid being called out, you weaken. Each time you silence your gut to follow the script, you vanish. And here's the paradox. The crowd doesn't care about you. It only cares that you're manageable, predictable, safe. It keeps you around as long as you don't challenge its authority. The moment you do, it turns on you, mocking, canceling, because your very existence becomes a threat to the system that taught obedience. So, the question remains, are you living or are you performing? Are you speaking your mind or are you filtering your thoughts for mass appeal? Are you choosing your path or are you following a trail laid down by those too afraid to forge their own? Because if you're not thinking for yourself, someone else is thinking for you. And if you're not choosing your life, you're being chosen by someone else's fear. Nietzsche didn't seek followers or fans. He sought free minds, individuals who could stare into the abyss of rejection and still stand tall. Those who would rather be hated for their truth than loved for their disguise. But becoming such a person requires a kind of death, the death of people-pleasing, the death of the need for validation, the death of the image you've curated. And most people aren't ready for this. They're not ready to die for who they are. But perhaps you are. Perhaps you're already awakening, feeling the tension between who you are and what the world wants from you. And that tension, that's not weakness. That's your soul trying to break free. Don't silence it. Don't sedate it. Don't shrink it to fit inside someone else's comfort zone, because the moment you do, they win. The system wins. The fear wins. And you lose the only thing that ever mattered, yourself. He who follows the crowd will be forgotten, not because he failed, but because he never existed in the first place. The crowd wants you safe, not sovereign. Understand this. The moment you begin to question, the moment you start thinking independently, they won't celebrate it. They'll attack it, not because you're wrong, but because you're free. And free people are dangerous in a world built on obedience. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He watched people betray their potential just to belong. Brilliance dissolve into conformity, originality mocked, shamed, and silenced. And he asked a question no one else dared to ask. What would you become if you weren't afraid to be alone? Let that sink in for a moment. What would you become if you didn't need applause? If you didn't fear rejection? If you weren't constantly adjusting your truth to make it more palatable for those who will never understand you anyway? You'd become something rare, something unforgettable, something immortal. But that's not what the world wants. The world wants you replaceable, easy to label, easy to read, easy to control. And that's why it trains you to chase sameness, to follow trends, to speak in slogans, to fear the silence that comes with real independence. Because silence is where the real you lives, the part of you that doesn't care about going viral, the part that asks the dangerous questions, the part that wonders, what if everything they taught me to want isn't what I need? That's where your path begins, the moment you stop running from your own voice. Because that voice, it's not weak, it's not naive. It's been buried under years of noise, shame, distraction, but it's still there, waiting. Nietzsche called this becoming the Übermensch, the overman, not in some arrogant sense, but in the sense of becoming someone who creates their own values, someone who doesn't wait for permission, someone who carves meaning from chaos and builds something original from it. But becoming that person means walking through the fire of isolation, the fire of self-doubt, the fire of losing everything you built on the foundation of being liked. And that's where most people stop. They hit resistance and they shrink. They feel misunderstood and they apologize. They feel judged and they retreat. But not you. You didn't come this far to disappear into the noise. You came here to burn through the script and write your own. That doesn't mean rebellion for rebellion's sake. It means responsibility. The responsibility of owning your choices, your mind, your soul, even when it's unpopular, especially when it's unpopular. Because the truth is, the crowd will never build a monument to the one who obeyed. They won't remember the quiet follower. They won't quote the man who said what everyone else was already saying. They won't tell stories about the one who lived by consensus. They remember the outliers, the ones who walked away, the ones who stood still while the rest were running in circles, the ones who chose their soul over their image. But here's what they don't tell you. Being that person is lonely. You'll lose people. You'll be called difficult, arrogant, selfish, not because you are, but because you didn't break. Because you had the courage to say, I won't play your game. I'll build my own. And when you start to build that life, a life based on principle instead of popularity, everything changes. You stop reacting to trends. You stop needing validation. You stop wasting time trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. You become selective, still dangerous in your own quiet way, because nothing can shake a person who knows who they are. Nothing can buy a person who's not for sale. Nothing can own a person who's claimed themselves fully, flaws, doubts, wounds, and all. And that's what Nietzsche was calling for. Not a perfect person, not a god, but a whole one. A human being who's not fractured into 1,000 masks. Someone who knows deep down that walking alone is better than walking in the wrong direction with everyone else. So look around. What are you following that doesn't serve you? Whose voice are you still obeying in the back of your mind? What dreams have you silenced because they made other people uncomfortable? And when will you finally say enough? I won't be ruled by fear, by the crowd, by this idea that blending in is success. Because time is moving, and the longer you wait, the more of yourself you lose. Until one day, you're not even sure what you think anymore. You only know what they think, what they want, what they reward. And that's not a life. That's a costume, a mask worn so long you forgot there was a face underneath. But now you remember. And that remembering, that return to yourself, is where immortality begins. Because those who follow the crowd are remembered for a moment, but those who walk alone are remembered forever. You were not born to be one of many. You were not created to dissolve into a sea of sameness, to parrot the ideas of those who came before you, or to die a quiet death in a life you didn't even choose. And Nietzsche didn't just want you to realize this, he wanted you to feel it. He wanted it to burn inside you. Because that burn, that resistance, that discomfort you feel when you think about stepping away from the herd, it's not fear. It's your soul trying to wake you up from a life of quiet conformity, from the routine that kills your spirit, from the small talk that keeps your truth hidden, from the jobs, the beliefs, the roles that don't fit but feel too safe to question. And here's the truth most won't tell you. The longer you follow the crowd, the harder it is to hear your own voice. You think you're choosing, but you're copying. You think you're free, but you're conditioned. Every decision filtered through what's acceptable. Every dream shrunk to what's realistic. Every truth watered down to keep the peace. But peace built on suppression is not peace. It's prison. And the worst part, most people love that prison because in it they're safe, unchallenged, never alone, but also never alive. They follow the crowd into mediocrity, into jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, values they never questioned, and when they're gone, no one remembers them because they never remembered themselves. And that's what Nietzsche meant when he said, "You'll be forgotten." Not because you didn't matter, but because you refused to matter. You chose obedience over originality, validation over vision, comfort over calling. And so, like millions before you, your life becomes a silent echo, felt by no one, remembered by none. But that doesn't have to be your story. There's still time. Time to speak what you've never dared say. Time to walk paths you've always feared. Time to let go of the roles, the expectations, the borrowed beliefs, and start creating. Creating not just art or work or impact, but a self. A real, raw, whole self. A self that doesn't apologize for being different. A self that doesn't need to be liked to feel worthy. A self that can stand alone in a room full of noise and still know who they are. That's rare. That's sacred. That's unforgettable. Because in a world of followers, the one who walks alone becomes a symbol, not a savior, not a guru, but proof. Proof that it's possible to break free, proof that you don't have to perform, proof that you can reject the script and still survive, even thrive. And that kind of life, it's not easy. It's not always praised, but it's yours, fully, unshakably, undeniably yours. And what you build from that place, that's what lasts. Not the approval, not the applause, not the trends you follow to fit in. What lasts is the truth you chose to live. And truth always outlives noise. So if you feel like you don't belong, good. You're not supposed to. If you feel like your voice is too sharp, too real, too much, good. It's meant to cut through the fog. If you feel like you're walking alone, good. You're finally on your own path. And one day, when the crowd forgets the latest trend, the latest opinion, the latest safe, easy, popular voice, they'll remember you because you didn't follow. You forged. You became someone who couldn't be owned, molded, or muted. You became someone whose silence said more than most people screaming. You became someone who, in a world of masks, chose to show up barefaced and brave. And that doesn't get forgotten. So, ask yourself right now, if this were your final day on Earth, would you be proud of the life you lived? Would you be proud of the version of you that showed up? Or would you realize too late that you traded greatness for comfort, that you followed the crowd straight into invisibility? Because you still have time. Time to return to your voice. Time to choose your truth. Time to walk, even if no one walks with you. Because one day, they'll ask, where are the ones who thought for themselves? Where are the ones who didn't follow? And someone will speak your name. Your name.